Hi, this is Rick McNary, and I made a PinPadauk and maple Celtic knot rolling pin and was asked to document the process. So this is the PinPadauk that I am ripping down into 3-inch wide boards. PinPadauk is an African hardwood. There comes the maple. Then I'll run it through a bandsaw to get it thinner for that Celtic knot part. Then I'll run it through my planer to make sure I have uniformity. Now when I glued these up, the 4 boards together make something wider than 3 inches. So I've got about 3 3/4 by 3, and I want a square piece, but I use wood glue clamps and glue this up. Notice it's a little bit of a rectangle rather than a square, so I'm going to square it up. There's also some glue marks or glue divots on there that once I get this resawn, I'll run that through the joiner to give me 4 nice, really crisp edges. Here comes the joiner. Then I mark in the middle, set the miter at 45 degrees, make a cut. Then that piece of maple that I've planed. Here comes the challenging part, trying to get that to glue up, because there's a lot of different pressures going on this. Making sure the glue is uniform and on there. So I use 1x2 kind of as a straight edge to get that going, and then I use my bar clamps. And you'll see there's a whole lot of just minor adjustments that go, because if you go too fast, too much pressure, it just kind of makes everything, as my father used to say, a walker jawed. So I'm going to repeat this process 3 more times because there are 4 cuts that go into this. So I'll take it back over to the miter saw and cut the other way. I like PinPadauk, although it does have a pretty strong toxicity. So I'm always using a respirator, an air mask, a good one when I work with any kind of an exotic wood like this or any wood. But this one in particular can really tear me up after a while. It's got a unique smell to it. You can, in fact, for those who do woodworking, after a period of time you can take a piece of sandpaper and scratch on the wood and do a little sniff test, and you can kind of figure out what kind of wood that it is, even though it's not branded. PinPadauk is an exquisite wood. I got this from Jesse Busenitz with Busenitz Custom Woodwork, an incredible young man just about 4 miles from me that has a sawmill, and so it's really handy that I can go out to him, and he's reasonably priced and just a terrific young man, and his wife and their little baby, and just the kind of good folks that make Kansas such a wonderful place to live in. You can never have too many clamps. When I'm asked what I want for Christmas or my birthday, it's always, I'll take some more clamps. You'd just be surprised. So I'm going to take it over to my lathe. I want to center it. So I'm going to use this little handy centering tool, if I can figure out how to put it on right. Center it up. And then I'll take it back over to the lathe and get it mounted on my lathe and get ready to start turning. Now, this is called a roughing gouge, and it's one of my favorite tools, and I'll use it predominantly on most of this. The most important part of turning wood is a sharp tool. If that isn't razor sharp, it's not going to work very well. You'll see back in the corner, I'll walk by it, my grinder is right there. Just walk by it. That little rascal gets a lot of use because I keep my tools as sharp as I possibly could. So I'm going to knock out a Forstner bit that I have in there and put a live turning spindle, or live point I guess I should say. So that little rascal's a nice little point. It turns around. I get it centered up, making sure it's good and taut. I'm going to go to a bird's eye view from here on out and let you see what it looks like. So you'll see the mat that I am standing on. I say it's a double thickness for two different reasons. One is so I can relieve my fatigue while I'm standing, and another one is that so I can lay down and cry when things go wrong. I can tell, and every once in a while you'll see me lay my tool on top of the wood, I can tell when I've got it round by laying the tool on top. And if it bounces, then just like that, I know it's not round. Because those are two different wood kinds and they've got very different grain patterns, when I get to that middle part where the Celtic knot is very, not difficult, but unusual to turn that part. So I'm just going to make sure I keep going down far enough. Now, one of the skills that I'm still working on is being able to take a long cylinder like this and make it really relatively uniform. Not as easy as you would think. You notice my Hayes FFA gloves on. I love wearing, I wasn't an FFA member, but I went to hear them speak, or went to their conference a few years ago, and as I say, there are 65,000 of my new heroes. Bright, brilliant, beautiful, blue-jacketed young people in agriculture we ought to just go ahead and turn the world over to tomorrow. My son talked me into buying a lathe a number of years ago to turn pins. First, he brought me one, and I told him I did not need another woodworking hobby. But once I got into turning wood, I have just simply fallen in love with it. So I'm going to mark the center, and then I'm going to give myself the pin part's going to be 12 inches. One of the things that my wife and others have commented on is that the handles, you'll notice when I'm done here, are nice and beefy handles. So I'm taking that roughing gouge and getting quite a bit of that stock off of there. And then I'm going to switch over to a new Easy Wood tool that I purchased recently, last Christmas as a matter of fact, that is carbide tipped, and I have really fallen in love with this little tool. Kind of gets me into the areas that I can't get into the roughing gouge. Nice thing about carbide is it's just pretty solid and keeps an edge. I used a square one there for a while. I also use the edge of that roughing gouge to kind of be a little bit of what we call a scraper, which is a flat piece that, so I'm going along there now with that flat edge of that roughing gouge, trying to make that as uniform as I possibly can. And I can make a lot of sawdust in a short period of time. So I'm clear down at the other end. So what I'll use to try to figure out, how to match this up, the handle up with the other end, is a set of calipers. You'll see me use those here in a minute just to give myself the dimension that I need. Gone to the other end and I put them on and said, okay, I need to be here right there. Got the calipers again, get that little round Easy Wood tool out, the carbide bit. It's going fast speed because this takes quite a while to do and I'm trying to hurry things up. So you'll see the calipers jump in every once in a while. This handle's probably not perfectly the same as the other, but pretty doggone close. And as I said, my wife likes the bigger handles and the solid handles. And she makes a pretty mean pie with it. Now I use a sandpaper, and this is where I really need to make sure I have my respirator on. Sandpaper itself, depending on the roughness or the texture that you have, the grit, I guess I should say, can actually be a little bit of a forming tool in and of itself. You'll see, notice I round the edges of the pen with that. And then once I get to a place where I'm pretty happy with the way it looks, I use a steel wool. That's a really nice finishing edge for the product. Now I use butcher block conditioner, which is of course food grade, and so you're not going to hurt anything. The nice thing about this is you just keep applying coats of this to it to get it going to start with, and then you go back over it with just vegetable oil, virgin oil, whatever you have, and there you have it.